The corridors of Northgate Memorial Hospital hummed with a low, artificial buzz, the kind that never left no matter how many hours you spent there. Underneath that hum, the scent of lemony disinfectant tried and failed to cover the staleness of fatigue, cold coffee, and things left unsaid. Dr. Micah Benton moved through the hallway with deliberate stillness, his dark green scrubs crisp, his ID badge swinging gently from a taut lanyard clipped to his chest. To an untrained eye, he might have looked like any orderly making rounds, a quiet figure easily ignored. But Micah saw everything. The whispers that ceased when he entered a room, the glances that skipped over his badge and zeroed in on the color of his skin, the assumptions, the doubt, the silence. Especially the silence. He passed two interns near the nurse's station, one snorting into his latte. "Maintenance has gotten bold lately," the other chuckled. Micah didn't pause, didn't look. He'd heard worse. During his first week in trauma rotation, when a resident handed him his own chart thinking it belonged to a patient at the surgical lounge, a tall figure blocked the entrance. White coat, polished loafers, the kind of doctor whose handshake came with a business card. Supply closets down the hall," the man said, smiling with the confidence of someone who'd never been questioned a day in his life. Micah stared at him for one clean moment, a silence sharp enough to slice through tension, then pushed the door open and entered. Inside, conversation dulled as heads turned. A few murmurs. A chuckle. "Guess the janitor's doing his rounds in surgical now. Bet he cleans better than he cuts." No one said it directly. They never did, but he didn't respond. Instead, Micah moved to his locker, retrieved a surgical tablet filled with annotated scans, and reviewed the triple bypass he was scheduled to lead in under an hour. His hands were steady, methodical, focused, but beneath the surface, a current of weariness pulled at him. Not from medicine. That part he loved. It was everything else, the coffee station. A crumpled napkin landed near his foot. The offender, a young anesthesiologist with manicured nails and a smirk, didn't even notice. Or pretended not to. Micah stepped around the trash. Across the room, Dr. Janice Norwood looked up, a neurologist past 60 with a sterling record and no stomach for confrontation. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. Her gaze dropped to her notes. She would not speak up. She never had. Micah checked his watch. 40 minutes until the procedure. He adjusted his cap, sipped coffee gone lukewarm, and turned toward the hallway. That's when it happened. Code Crimson, or 3. Code Crimson. Immediate surgical response required. The air snapped tight. Conversations died. Coffee cups clattered. Nurses grabbed pagers. "Who's on trauma today?" someone shouted. "Dr. Ellis." A nurse answered, already checking her tablet. "But he's stuck in traffic. ETA 20 minimum." "Patient doesn't have 20 minutes," another voice said, brittle with panic. And just like that, no one moved. The room, full of surgeons, some of the best trained in the state, froze. Too senior to admit fear. Too unsure to step up. Too afraid of failing to even try. From the doorway, calm as still water, a voice cut through. "I can take it." Heads turned. There stood Dr. Micah Benton, half-lit by the hallway fluorescence, posture quiet and ready. His badge glinted. Chief of Cardiothoracic Surgery. His presence silenced the air like a switch flipped. No bravado. No announcement. Just clarity to a nurse. Young, freckled, the same one who'd once asked him to move a bedpan, blinked at him. "Wait, you're a..." But he was already walking. "I need vitals, latest scan reports, and a ready team in or 3 now." And suddenly, the machine began to move. Orders flew. Feet scrambled. The air changed. The surgical suite was chaos. A middle-aged man lay unconscious, a mess of red and urgency beneath the sterile sheets. Vitals plummeted. The monitor screamed. No time for prep talks or nervous glances. Micah scrubbed in. Each movement efficient. Each gesture controlled. BP's crashing 60/35. "Clamp that artery. I need retraction on the right, suction left. Now." In the observation bay, the same intern who'd laughed at him earlier now stood frozen behind the glass. His mouth parted in disbelief as Dr. Micah Benton's hands became an extension of purpose. Common crisis. Precision in panic. Outside, Dr. Norwood whispered to no one, "He's leading it." The words were reverent. 10 minutes passed. A heartbeat returned. A monitor beeped steady. The air in the room, once stiff with dread, loosened. "He's stable," someone murmured. Micah peeled off his gloves, breath slow and deep. A nurse, the nurse, looked at him, shame crumpling her expression. "I'm sorry," she whispered. He met her eyes, gentle but tired. "It's not your apology I need." He stepped out of the room. The doors swung shut behind him. And for the first time that day, the silence meant something else entirely. Evening draped the hospital in a peaceful quiet, the sterile white lights flickering in rhythm with the fading light of day. The tension from earlier had dissipated, replaced by something deeper. Respect. Doctor. Micah Benton sat alone in his office, the door ajar as usual. His scrub top was still damp from the shift, his hand resting on the photo of his father that sat atop the shelf. A younger Micah stood beside his father, who was wearing a knowing smile, his hands worn by years of hard work. "They saw me today, Dada Jonam," Micah whispered under his breath. "They finally saw me." Before the thought could sink in, a gentle knock echoed from the doorframe. A young intern appeared, shifting nervously on his feet, fumbling with the hem of his coat. "Dr. Benton?" the intern asked. I wanted to say what you did in there. It was extraordinary. I didn't know who you were before, but I won't forget now." Micah nodded slowly, his face serious but not proud. "You don't have to remember my name," he replied quietly. "Just remember what matters when someone's life is on the line." The intern flushed, nodding hastily before slipping away. The days that followed carried a subtle change through the hospital. It wasn't loud or overt, but it was there. The way people glanced at him when he passed. How doors were held open with a little more intention. Conversations paused, not from awkwardness, but from respect. A few nurses gave small nods, some still unsure, but the shift was undeniable. One morning, as Micah rifled through his desk drawer, he discovered a worn leather-bound notebook, his father's notes. Cursive writing scrawled across the pages. Life lessons, quiet wisdom from a man who understood what it was like to go unnoticed. One phrase stood out. "Even when the world won't look at you, never stop looking at yourself with honor." Micah ran his finger over the faded ink, the words grounding him as he closed the book. Later that afternoon, a meeting was called in the hospital, a gathering that felt different from the usual scheduled ones. Dr. Holland, the medical director, stood at the front, his clipboard tucked beneath one arm. Micah leaned against the wall, arms crossed, observing. "I want to acknowledge something that many of you witnessed earlier this week," Dr. Holland began, his voice even. Dr. Benton responded to a code blue with calm precision, saving a patient's life when every second counted. His leadership in or 3 was exemplary. Dr. Holland's gaze shifted to Micah. "We're proud to have him on our team. From the ER to administration, I expect every department to show him the respect he deserves." The room erupted in applause. Hesitant at first, then more genuine. Micah gave a small nod. He wasn't seeking praise, but acknowledgement, and now he had it. Once the applause died down, the crowd dispersed. The hallway quieted, the noise of admiration fading. Then she came, Nurse Jenna, the same one who had once shoved the mop into his hands. She didn't walk with the same clipped confidence now. Her steps were slower, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. "Dr. Benton," she said quietly. Micah looked up from a patient file he was reviewing. She hesitated, her voice wavering as she spoke. I wanted to apologize. For earlier. For assuming." Micah studied her for a moment. Her gaze wasn't offensive now, only regret. Humility. He didn't scold her, nor did he smile. He simply said, "Next time, look at the name badge first." The words were not harsh, but they didn't need to be. They were true, clean, and now hers to carry. The rest of the day passed like any other, but for Micah, the hospital halls no longer felt indifferent. Nurses who once ignored him now made eye contact. Residents who had never acknowledged his presence gave small nods of respect. It wasn't something that could be demanded. It had to be earned, and now it had been recognized. That evening, As Micah turned a corner near the service wing, he passed an older black janitor pushing a cart. Their eyes met. The man gave a subtle nod. It wasn't exaggerated, just enough to acknowledge, "I saw what you did. I understand what it meant." For the first time that week, Micah felt truly seen. Not because of his title, but because someone, somewhere, understood. The janitor didn't ask what had happened. He didn't need to. He already knew.